Mr. Chris Frostad. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you. Good day today.
Good day today. I have to say, I'm feeling a little bit off color. 2 weeks on the road,
Yeah,
plus a site visit down to ISO Energy's Tony M mine and the White Mesa mill, and I saw the Ring mill as well, and fields. Came
you've been
back
everywhere.
exhausted. I don't know how you guys do it. It's an awful thing to
Well,
have to
I
do.
don't know how you do it.
Yeah, it was not easy. Not easy. Not easy. My watch tells me I was averaging 4 hours 33 minutes per night over the last 2 weeks.
Oh,
Sleeping, I'm hoping.
I
Not
doubt it.
drinking.
I doubt
Sleeping.
it. I've seen that sleep. Yes.
Hey, so right, so well, crikey, there's a lot happened. I think we spoke last. I was attending the WNA conference here in London. Thankfully,
Yeah, yeah. Before that all happened.
before all that happened. So, lots of good conversations, lots of excitement. I'm not
Yep.
sure what's progressed, how the market's really kind of moved. Price doesn't seem to have really done too much as a result. Is that a case of another catalyst gone and went?
Well, it's only been a couple of weeks, and I think people seem to want to see immediate reaction to all of this stuff. And I think, as we've learned over the last 3 years, is uranium is not moving as quickly on so many fronts as we'd like to see it or we expect it, but it continues to head in the right direction. The stories keep heading in the right direction, so it's we have to be patient, let things run their course.
I've been issuing those instructions for a long time, but unfortunately, that's a wild and woolly bunch.
Well,
who
maybe it's
needs
because last
instant
time we had the big
gratification.
run in uranium, everything
Yeah,
was happening within a week.
yeah.
Yeah, it was just bang, ba bang, ba bang.
But no one knew what until after the event.
No,
So
nobody,
this
no,
is
it
going to,
wasn't. Nobody knew what they were doing or why. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. They've
right.
long.
And I see a little sort of disconnect between some of the former uranium bulls who are just like kind of a little bit had it up to here, had it up to,
Yeah, yeah. There's been a lot of
yeah,
people yelling through bullhorns for the last 3, 4 years, and
gets
it's,
tiring,
yes,
gets
well,
tiring.
it is because the reality is not as exciting as the lead up. But
No,
it's there. It's there. I think we all see that things are heading in a positive direction overall, and that
yeah.
we're here for a reason, and we're going to make hay out of this.
There you go. We are going to make money out of this, folks, but patience is required. Absolutely. Well, look, there's a few topics I want to talk about today, and we're kind of going to go there. I want to talk about 3 Mile Island. I want to talk about asset mars. I want to talk about M&A. I want to talk about bifurcation in the marketplace, and there's a few other things which I could probably throw at you as well if you don't mind, and if you're open to that. And should we start with 3 Mile Island, because I guess that's where all the negativity started. Is it now cause for
Well,
celebration?
yeah, I think when you look at the headline. I mean, the headline that came out last week was, well, 3 Mile Island nuclear plant will reopen to power Microsoft data centers. So, it's got there's so much hype in that sentence alone. I mean, 3 Mile Island, everybody reacts to 3 Mile Island, but it got shut down back in 45 years ago. But there's 2 reactors there. So first of all, the one they're talking about is not the one that melted down
Melted?
by any means. It's the other one that kept
Right.
on running, and it
Yeah.
ran until 2019, and it got shut down purely for economic reasons. And the other thing that's kind of buried in the article is the fact that this is all about a purchase agreement. So Microsoft is now contracted to buy so much electricity from that plant, which I guess ultimately has made it potentially economic again, so they can turn it back on again. But it certainly is that entire plant's output will not be heading necessarily to Microsoft. So I think it's a little hyped up in that regard. But again, it's all interesting from an AI perspective as to the effect it's having on energy consumption. Not necessarily uranium prices, but energy consumption.
Well, there's the thing, right? I think there's an expectation also. People like to read into these things, and where would it be if the uranium folks like us weren't getting excited about every possible eventuality. So I think there's an expectation that maybe there might be a price insensitivity from folks like Microsoft, or from the tech space
Yeah.
demanding this energy. It's there's existing energy demands, and then there's future energy demands from these tech companies, these data centers, these AI
Right.
data centers, right? But has anyone sort of done a study on like how much additional energy we're talking about, and does it add up to a
Oh,
hill
well,
of
the numbers are
beans?
out there. I mean, the numbers are out there. I mean, data centers right now take up maybe 1-2% of total electricity consumption. That's data
Oh,
centers. And
oh,
yeah, it looks like AI, from the things I've read, could increase electricity consumption in data centers by about 30%.
right,
Okay. But that's only that 30% of that 1 to 3%. So definitely over the next 5 to 10 years, we're probably looking at data center consumption moving from 1 to 2% of global demand to upwards to 4 or 5%, maybe.
right,
So that's just that piece. Now, power electricity demand is increasing by what, 2-3% a year, anyways. And nuclear power is, sorry, I'm throwing a bunch of numbers around here, is what, 10%, about 10% of electricity generation. So if that increase in AI demand is being served up, 10% of it is being served up by nuclear power. And even if nuclear power grows to 15% or something like that, it's, you just keep whittling this thing down to the point where the AI demand on electricity is not necessarily moving the needle when it comes to uranium prices. How's that?
right. So, well, no, no, I get it. I get it. I'm trying to look at the positives here. Like, if costs go up by 30% broadly, or if inflation moves by 1% or 2%, it does move. It does move the market. So maybe we shouldn't be too belligerent here, in the sense that it all counts, it all adds up, and a
Well,
nuclear
certainly it all adds
is
up.
starting to find its way. And again, coming back to expectation versus market reality, expectation is that nuclear usurps other energy forms like such as fossil fuels. That's the expectation. Coal, even eating into wind. We talked about it last time round. I think people don't realize that renewable energy is, as much as maybe a nuclear advocate might want to dislike it, is hitting like 50% of energy baseload supply here in Europe. UK over 50%, Spain, where it was recently, over 50%. It it starts it's doing its job, but I guess we need to remember that as populations grow, as energy usage per head grows, we will need all of the above. So I guess that's the good news in all of this. I'm trying to
Well, for sure,
trying to be
it's
positive
part
here,
of it. It's part of it. Um,
right?
yeah, but it's a piece. And again, if we're talking about AI, I think a lot of that's going to wind up. We've seen it in the articles. That's going to wind up being served by SMRs, right? Which is another newsworthy nuclear story.
Well, should we talk about SMRs? Because I think you came out with some figures last time round that we spoke. Might be worth reminding people of
Well, again,
exactly
SMRs
what we're
is,
talking about.
which is the whole thing is fascinating. But SMRs, small modular reactors, and microreactors, you can drag them around behind a truck, and where they can and how they can be used. But from a uranium perspective, it takes 40 SMRs to consume the same amount of electricity for a single typical reactor, more or less, and probably 10 microreactors to make up one SMR in terms of consumption. So, again, you have to start extrapolating those numbers backwards to figure out how much, okay, then how much more uranium are these things using that they wouldn't have used otherwise? And you're talking about an increase in uranium consumption of 1 or 2%, maybe a little more. But I mean, it's when you boil it back down to the price of uranium, which is what which we all focus on at the end of the day, in and of itself, it's not a major factor. And again, you have to go back to what you're saying. You got to add up all of these things. And I think what the real story is the overall
Yeah.
use of nuclear as a power source. And if right now it's 10%, is it going to head to 15% or 20%? And that's really the story that's going to drive uranium prices. Well, that's half the story. The other story is, of course, there isn't enough uranium to power all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, okay. It is cumulative buildup of demand drivers and the technology that we'll be using it as well. So I think it is. We should be definitely room to be optimistic, room to be
For sure.
positive. But I guess where I've kind of got in my head is this slightly more sanguine approach. We must be less arm waving and more realistic in terms of the realities of the market and the market drivers and these kind of accretive growth patterns rather than this meteoric growth pattern. I think there's an expectation that the price will just go surging after each one of these catalysts, and of course the usual disappointment when it doesn't. Like maybe it's like people feel when they've filled in their lottery numbers and go, this time it's it, and the lottery numbers
For
go,
sure.
you didn't win, and that kind of next week.
But having said that, when the price does move, it does tend to jerk around. I mean, from the spot price perspective, not necessarily, in beat with the catalysts that we think should be driving it, but because it is such a tight market, we keep talking about that as well. When it does move, it jumps around.
It jumps and it bounces back and it goes forward, and I kind of quite like the 3 steps forward, 1 step back. I don't mind that. But it's like we got everyone super excited back in January, February. 106, awesome, loved it. Mm-hmm. It's always going to be this way, and it's not like true love. it's always going to be this way. But unfortunately, the realities of life settled in, and we're back to where the market says we need to be back to, and that's fine. It's absolutely fine. I'm in this game. I've invested in this game. We've made some money in this so far. We will continue to make money on the so far, but patience is absolutely required. I mean, you sort of talk about pricing there. It's a good segue to the next thing I want to talk about, which is a bifurcation of the market. I've been talking about this for 2 years. Lots of different views on it as to will it happen? How will it happen? Will these molecules just rotate in a different pattern around the world, or is there genuine separation here between East and West at the moment? What do you think?
Well, I think every catalyst we see over the last year or two has just layered onto that thesis that we're going to move to a 2-price system. It's probably driven by 3 primary things. I mean, one is Kazakhstan in general, and where their uranium is going, where the pricing of their uranium is going, et cetera. The other is the restrictions on, sanctions and things on moving uranium around, which did not exist before. And then thirdly, certainly in the Western world, it's just that the lack of uranium. So there's a lack of access to it, and then a lack of it. So there's definitely going to be that shifting in pricing. Absolutely. The things that have happened in Kazakhstan are quite, definitely point in that direction, where you see a lot of their contracts going to China and to Russia. You see the pricing going up through their taxation, through the difficulties they've had in a lot of their production, those sorts of things. So, that it, and actually the sanctions on Europe have made it difficult for them to actually transport uranium west, because it typically has been going through Russia. So all of these things have turned Kazakhstan into one of the main focal points around this bifurcation. Plus the relationship with China, right? I mean, that's only going to get deeper and deeper. So you can see a lot of that uranium moving that direction. So where Kazakhstan's low cost uranium was a primary driver in pricing in general, and what was going on in the market over the last 10, 15 years, it's kind of losing that status, certainly to the West.
I think what surprised me about one of last week's sort of statements out of Russia around this enriched uranium, et cetera, was, Putin hinting that they might have to cut off the supply of enriched uranium to the West. You're like, are you kidding? The US would have cut that stuff off a year ago. I mean, I have to marvel at the restraint, quite frankly. As we slow march into that kind of, I say that bifurcation, that's complete separation of these two. It reminds me of being back at school, and you said, two guys have got to pick the football team that they want to play for them, one by one, and what's happening is, you're seeing sort of teams being formed and created east and west, but it's still not there yet. I think Russia, I'm stunned that they're still supplying into the West, into these contracts of theirs. They feel obliged to, whilst all of these sanctions and all the other kind of batshit crazy stuff that's going on.
And that's the problem in the
Europe
West,
is
right?
happening.
The problem in the West is that they've first of all, they've been getting most of their converted uranium from Russia, which is an issue. And to your school play yard analogy, the West said, well, we're not allowed, we're not going to buy your uranium anymore. And Russia says, well, we're not going to sell it to you anymore. So you've thrown that wall up between the two. And meanwhile, the United States is sitting there without any uranium. I mean, they don't produce much right now.
It's nuts. The plan B was not thought through, but I don't think the wall's completely up in that, using that analogy, in the sense that Russia has doubled its sales over the past 2 years. Its numbers have gone doubled. They've doubled because they continue to do so. But I think we're reaching that point where they're going to say, look, enough is enough here, guys. We're going to have to stop. You're putting us in a position where we're going to have to stop. And like I say, I slightly admire the restraint in
it is shocking.
Sense,
it is shocking. You're absolutely right. That they didn't pull
without picking sides. I'm not picking anyone on the team. I'm not supporting either team. I'm just saying,
not our job.
Logically, critical thinking wise, it's batshit crazy. But isn't politics always? Right. Okay. Well, we shall see what happens in terms of that evergreen pressure, in terms of this potential for a bifurcated market. And I think expectation is, because of lack of supply, prices in the West will have to rise. People are going to have to pick a team and a side from where they buy, because otherwise, I suspect the Americans,
but I think we're going to see a lot
team might be slightly upset, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of strange movement in the spot price as a result of that too.
It's going to have to figure out a path, because obviously you can't go and buy it cheap in the East and then sell it into the West. I think that the US have been very clear about that. From my banking days, we've just said, well, just explain the rules and then we'll find a workaround. It's true, right? That's what you do. We'll stretch it and we'll push it, but there will be a workaround, and that was definitely happening in the oil game when I was in that, sanctions or no, and I think it'll be the same here. We shall see. We shall see. Right. We better move on, because there's a whole bunch of stuff we want to kind of get into. I think a little bit of feedback. So having sort of spent a bit of time in the US over the past couple of weeks, at conferences, etc., met quite a few of the kind of the players in the market. The ISO Energies of this world. We actually were lucky enough to go down to the Tony M mine down in Utah. We went down literally in the Tony M mine and sort of saw what they'll be taking through, about 19 miles of existing tunnels there, which was great. But we also went up to and by the way, the team there know what they're doing. Lots of optionality, lots of expansion possibility. So I'm looking forward to sort of seeing what they do about that. The other one was like White Mesa Mill. Crikey. Right. Yeah. I think I was expecting it to be empty or people rattling around in it, but actually, just getting on with it. In fact, the most amazing thing I saw there was at the end, they kind of put in these two massive circuits for their rare earths. And I thought that'd be for show. It was something like, here's what we're going to do. Here's the theory of what we're going to do. Oh, no. 86 one-ton bags of NdPr on the latest run that they did. You're like, wow. What? Yeah. They're producing rare earths. That was like one batch. Yeah. They're getting on with that stuff, right? We saw like tons and tons, huge heaps of ore ready for processing uranium, and they're next up to kind of go through the plant. It's pretty cool. Actually, it's pretty cool. It's real.
Now, are they looking to take? Will the Tony M product be going there? Is that the
Yeah, absolutely,
plan?
absolutely. That was the deal, you know.
Yeah,
So they know the ore that'll be schlepped up the road by truck
it's a bit of a distance,
into.
though, isn't it?
Yeah, it says about 2.5 hours by road.
Yeah,
So
that's
in
not
trucking
too
terms,
bad.
I guess that's not crazy.
Yeah,
Beautiful countryside. But the other thing they had was loads and loads of ore from different mines around the world. I think they had like 9 different companies had sent the ore there to
is
be
it rare earth
processed.
or uranium? It's rare earth, right?
We're in uranium now.
Oh, okay.
The world of uranium, Cameco stuff was there, just all over, from all over the world. So it's pretty impressive, actually. I have to say, like I say, I wasn't expecting much, and it kind of surprised on the upside
Yeah, no, that's good.
from
Good to
me.
hear.
So I think they were. Don't worry about it. The plant's plenty big, and the circuits are plenty big to process uranium, vanadium, and the rare earths stuff. Impressive team, and if anything, I think they've been a little bit conservative with me, conservative in the conversations I've had, and I'm probably waiting to because I met the guy who runs the plant there. He said, like, I'd rather deliver it and then tell people than tell people I'm going to deliver it and then have to deliver it. That's our mentality. It was impressive. It was impressive.
Good.
Talking of
Good.
mills, talking of mills,
Oh my
I
God.
also, I don't know if you've been there. You kind of, when you go to the 20M mine, which is ex Energy Fuels mine, now owned by ISO
Right.
Energy, you take the same driveway off the main road, and you drive past the Shootering mill, which I think is Anfield Energy mill.
Yeah.
That is rattling around. There is not a lot happening there. There's definitely no people. I'm not sure if there's much in it either. So I was kind of
No.
wasn't sure if that was a
Yeah, I'd heard that. I mean, the real asset there, I think, is the license to some degree,
There
because
you go.
that
You got to put a value on that.
then you can just do it. That's the kicker, for sure.
Yeah. But you must be 50, 60, 70 grand in for the build, maybe 100. I don't know. I think I was told 50 million about 5 years ago. So maybe that's not the same now, should we say?
Yeah.
So the fact that it's all there, in the right.
That's that area
zip
too,
code.
right? I mean, that
Right.
area is all hard rock, right?
Yeah.
That's all hard rock stuff, and I mean, Western uranium's up there too. But yeah, and that was, I mean, historically that was the center of the universe for uranium, that whole European stuff and whatever. But it was all hard rock, and the world seems to be, in the U.S., heading in a different direction these days, for sure, in terms of mining this stuff.
Well, we shall see.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's, just on, I guess the sort of the big topics that we heard talk about, and I'm talking clearly, gold, silver, copper, uranium, bunch of M&A conversations going on at the moment seem to be on the lips of everyone, and this massive disconnect between metal prices and equity prices, and therefore M&A is inevitable, and maybe that money comes cascading down through the developers and explorers, etc. Who knows? Shall we get an update on Paladin and Fission? What is that happening?
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think it's going to be. I think we're going to see more as well of this type of stuff because things haven't been moving. Things aren't through the roof. So as people are looking at these transactions, I don't think they're necessarily faced with extraordinary price tags on this stuff. Right now, there's still a lot of upward movement. In the case of Paladin and Fission, they got their vote through. They needed 2/3. As I understand it, they had to get they had to utilize the warrant holders or the option holder votes to make it there. And I think they're Chinese shareholders who own about 11%. I think it's 11%. It could be offside. Are kind of challenging that at the moment. But it's
challenging it. Why? Challenging it. They don't think it's a good deal. They think it's too expensive.
I don't think they think it's a good deal. And you know what I'm not sure of? I'd have to look it up again. It's been a while. Whether there's offtake. I think there's an offtake agreement attached to their investment, but I'm not clear on that right now. Anyway, I think it's to be resolved pretty quick, like probably within the next week. They'll get that resolved. It's in there now. They're looking at it.
Right. And do you think? I mean, we'll forget the gold, silver, and copper guys for this conversation. But uranium, we've seen a little bit of M&A, and people like UEC and Denison have been very shrewd in the past, making these acquisitions and getting value for that in the marketplace. We've seen a little bit on the exploration side going on. Do you see that as in this compared to this market, this cycle compared to last cycle?
Well, it's a little easier to look at the playing field in uranium because there's only 9 of us or them, or I mean, there's just not a lot of players, so you don't have to look at it on a macro basis. You can kind of look at it a little more specifically. But you're right. I mean, UEC's been very shrewd. It makes a lot of sense. They just this morning announced that they bought assets from Rio Tinto down in the States. So now they've got a third plant. As we know, they're doing work up in Canada when they bought UEX, which gave them and the Rough Rider, the old Hathor project, Hathor, Rio Tinto, what have you. So they've been, they have been acquiring assets in a fairly, strategigic manner. And yeah, I think Denison would be. I think the two of them would be an interesting merger. I mean, they're both about the same value these days. UEC picked up UEX and the JCU assets. Denison holds some of those assets still. That would be interesting. Create quite an interesting uranium company.
You're not the first person to say that.
Yeah,
I think. Well, but you
never know when it comes down to ego and things like that. You never know who's going to do what. I always said that I thought Denison should have picked up JCU before UEX did, and they probably should have tried to pick up UEX before UEC did. But that's fine. I mean, they've kept a very good focus over there. They're advancing projects in a pretty good clip, and it would make for quite a North American story, I think, for sure.
It definitely would. We'd have to have a conversation about valuations, etc. Quite frankly, because that's a whole bunch of money there, which I think maybe needs a little bit of backfilling in terms of proximity to revenue and cost of capital between now and then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would certainly be, you start creeping up towards the kind of Cameco type levels, not necessarily experience or assets or production capability anytime soon, but it'd be definitely interesting. So UEC Denison, let's start a rumor. That'd be brilliant.
I think we just did.
I'm joking, dear SEC. That was a joke. And I'm offshore. Don't touch me. Right. And so but I think the eternal problem is, and again, we got this very much loud and clear from the conferences the past couple of weeks, is, coming back to that kind of disconnect between equity prices and metals, et cetera, is that with this M&A expectation that the money comes cascading down through, to the smaller companies, because the money needs to get redistributed. Investors are looking to, go again if they've made some money, etc. What do you feel the reality is at the moment? I think some of these explorers are going to have to find new business models, new ways of working, ways to survive. What's the play?
Yeah, it's for explorers. I think there will be, but it's not going to be an easy road there. We've talked about this before. It requires a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of experience and the right land package. You need a lot of property. And, the problem we've had up in the basin certainly is that these properties to get chopped up into little wee pieces and handed around so many times that you haven't got a whole lot of elbow room to really do what you want to be doing. So, we've seen a lot of companies, picking up property what they can and then JVing them off or selling them off to somebody else who wants to get in the uranium business. And I don't think that's what's going to find uranium. No, I think it's tough. It's access to capital, right? It's the right land package and it's access to capital at the end of the day. And there's only a handful out there that I think really have got the right land package. Now, it's hard to say that because, of course, every time we find something, it's in the last place we thought it would be. But that's out there as well. But you've got some bigger players out there like the ISO that you mentioned, and ISO Energy is doing really well out there. And Canalaska's got a lot of property out there. Sky Harbor's got a lot of property out there. We've got a lot of property out there. And then you start to fall off into some of your smaller players, and from a land package standpoint, and that becomes difficult. It becomes a bit of a Hail Mary, because it's either there or it's not. So from a business model perspective, yeah, I think we've got to start finding opportunities to put together the right land packages that are of interest to the bigger players. I don't think we're going to do well as long as we see small junior exploration companies simply working with each other to kind of cobble together the capital they need. The bigger players are not going to get involved in this stuff unless they see something of promise, because that's not the business they're in is not greenfield exploration by any means. But it's out there. I think it's again it's a game of patience, and it's moving forward. But from an M&A perspective, I don't think that's what you're going to necessarily see in the junior exploration space, because if somebody's interested in somebody else's land package, it's usually some subset of it. It's not the entire package. And buying the whole company typically doesn't make sense just to get your hands on one particular property you find interesting. Yeah. I think. And then if you look at the M&A on the developer side, I mean, the problem on the developer side is that by and large, you're talking about a whole host of companies that have never built a uranium mine before, which is a risk across the board, and that's not their fault. That's just the way the market's kind of reacted. So, and you've got a handful of them that are determined to put these things into production, and probably will, like a Global Atomic or a few that are doing well with advancing those properties. But I think you've got a lot of them that are just going through the motions, hoping to get bought at some point in time by somebody who's going to start picking up the assets, which is like it's the Fission Paladin story, which makes sense. So, you have to you can't look at it holistically and on a macro basis. You just got to start looking at the assets that each of these companies hold and see whether any sort of M&A makes sense to them, depending on where they are on the planet and what they're working on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of caught my eye, I think it was an FT this morning, which was that this mineral security partnership, which is basically this coalition of 14 countries plus the European Commission, like putting together a kind of a financing network, right? It's an event being held in New York, and this. What a MSP, I think they're going by. They're looking at 30 different critical minerals mining projects at the moment, and one of the companies that we're doing some stuff with, which is Lifezone. They've got a massive nickel project in East Africa. It's a massive, huge project. And I think what they're trying to say is, look, we need to be genuine. This kind of critical mineral list is all well and good having them, but what are you going to do about it? Because you are competing against China. You've got to challenge, in this case, this nickel project, challenging that whole Chindonesia, China, Indonesia, and also in the Philippines as well a little bit. How do you get a hold of that kind of supply chain and not be dependent on China ruining your day just because it can? To think things like that, those kind of critical minerals lists where you, and then I think the other thing about this conference is that they're kind of invited along the private sector as well. So you kind of got the Black Rocks and the like in attendance. Yeah, the big banks is basically what I'm saying. Who are going to be there at this thing? Goldman, Citigroup, and Rio Tinto as well. Government who don't know what they're doing, but understands the problems, and private sector who perhaps can co-invest, and with the likes of Rio Tinto, Anglo American, actually do know what they're doing. Perhaps the uranium sector could be a beneficiary of something like that if you throw that into the kind of critical minerals.
If they can move fast enough. I mean, that's always the issue. Yeah. How do you move faster and with more money than the Chinese?
Yeah. This is true.
You can eat your lunch. It's it's a challenge, to put these. I mean, because that's the issue, like you say. I mean, government, everybody understands the problem. There's just, how do you, in a capitalist society, how do you make it make sense economically? You're always going to have somebody battling you the other direction to stop doing that. It's a challenge to just get this stuff actually moving. And even once it gets going, a year or two later, somebody runs the numbers again and decides you shouldn't be doing that. So it stops and starts a lot of these programs. But there's other areas we haven't heard out of. I mean, I've seen a lot of these critical mineral programs coming out of different governments around the world, and it turns into a lot of talk, and a lot of conferences, and a lot of presentations.
What you mean? It's used as a sort of bargaining tool to renegotiate terms with partner countries, or even adversarial situations like we're in now, with where we've passed ourselves with Russia, with China, the whole kind of Eastern bloc.
Well, you see Dubai coming out with, they want to start throwing all kinds of money at anything that isn't oil.
This is true.
And they've got a national strategy for this, and they're looking at all of these critical minerals, and they want to get involved in offtake and mining and all of these projects. But I've been watching this for 2 years now. And, I've yet to see a transaction actually, come out of it, despite all the money and all the talk.
I worked in the Middle East, and it was like lots of talk, lots of demand, definitely lots of money, but nothing splashed out. So I think the long on theory and desire, but
I mean, even the U.S., to the extent that, as we said earlier, they're behind the 8 ball on, from 8 different directions, and to the extent that they're trying to put programs and things in place to get the conversion and get the, support the industry, man, it's a trickle at the end of the day compared to what's needed and what's necessary.
Money. Where's it all going to come from, Chris?
Yeah,
where's it all going to come from?
Where we wind up with these conversations.
It makes the world go round. Well, look, there's some topics for people to think about, maybe even come back and feed. We had a few people write in, and they just are in the space. They know what the heck they're talking about. It's been really refreshing listening to them and hearing them talk about stuff which perhaps we don't take for granted in terms of the reality of the industry, the sector. We're sitting here with our investors' hat on going, this is what we want. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that what you want, what you get is all things that Molly used to say. Work harder, but work harder at finding the type of money which can move your projects forward. You guys are in, I think the explorers are in sort of in that kind of hinterland at the moment, where you're just waiting to sort of see how this pans out towards the end of the year. Great expectations coming out of the next nuclear conference in the US, or will this just be another moment that'll come and go?
I think it'll be similar to what we saw come out of the WNAs, in that people are going to learn a lot, they're going to talk a lot. They're not necessarily going to run back and hit the button tomorrow. Right. But I think it's all a build up. It's all a build up. People are, and again, we've talked about before, in this industry, it's difficult to get the true lay of the land. Because the information is buried here, there, and everywhere. It's not that transparent. So these conferences certainly get people together and talking. You can start putting the puzzle pieces together that you may not have seen before. But yeah, I think we're gonna continue to see this gradual improvement, and yeah, it may bounce every once in a while up or down or what have you because of a number of factors. But I think by and large, we're all still heading in the right direction.
Okay. Patience, Dr. Gordon. Patience is required. Right. I'm going to leave you. I've got places to be, people to see, and so have you.
There you go.
Appreciate the weekly chats. They're just meant to be gentle introductions to people who perhaps don't know the space so well, and perhaps you don't necessarily want to listen to all the hype, but kind of get us a more conservative view. And we're still positive, but we're going to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, I'll see you next week.
Okay. Have a good one.